Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We're from Group 4 and we're going to talk about feminism based on the book provided titled Contemporary Literary and Cultural Theory by Pramod Nair. Our group consists of me, Faizah Rafani, and then Intan Eka Putri and also Kaylagusti Suwadhani. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the definition of feminism. So feminism is both a political stance and a theory that focuses on gender and fights for equality. So it argues that gender roles are not natural, but socially constructed. So women are trained to fit roles like mother or daughter. This theory works to reveal and challenge the system. Feminist cultural theory studies how gender roles appear in media like books, movies, and ads, showing how these portrayals relate to real life social condition. For example, is advertisement. So you might notice advertisement in Indonesia, like cleaning advertisement, always start by women. Next, please. So we come to the next chapter, opening moves. There are a few of feminists who talk about this. The first one is Mary Wollstonecraft. So Wollstonecraft, an 18th century feminist thinker, she argued that gender inequality was not natural, but a result of the lack of education for women. In A Vindication of the Rights of Women, published on 1792, she rejected the idea that women were weaker or inferior, and she emphasizes the need for education to make them equal partners in society, not just wives. The second feminist is Margaret Fuller. She was an early feminist in the USA, known for her book, Women in the 19th Century. So, like the previous feminist, she believed education was key to women's freedom, but she went further by rejecting fixed gender roles. She argued that men and women both have masculine and feminine traits and should not be limited by traditional expectations. The other feminist, Virginia Woolf, she was a key feminist thinker of the 20th century. In A Room of One's Own and Three Guinness, she argued that women were taught to see the world through a male perspective, while their own writing was dismissed for not following male divine literary styles. She also believed language itself was shaped by men, limiting how women could express their experience. To be accepted, women writers had to adopt male-centered aesthetics. And then the last feminists in the book The Second Sex, Beaver argued that women are not born inferior, but are shaped by society to be seen as less than men. She introduced othering, where men are the standard and women are viewed as secondary. So she has a famous quote: "One is not born a woman, but becomes one," which means gender roles are learned, but and not natural. She also believed women should take control of their own lives instead of following roles imposed by men. Her ideas about gender as a social construct helped inspire a second wave of feminism. Let's come to the next topic, sex and gender. The first one is the social construction of gender. So feminist theory separates sex, which biological, and gender, social. Sex refers to physical traits. Gender is shaped by society's expectation. For example, women can have children, but that is sex, but society assigns deeper meanings, which is gender, like motherhood defining a true woman and a woman being not complete without children. These are not biological facts, but social beliefs. So gender is a social construct, meaning society assigns roles based on biology. Feminists see gender as an ideology because it makes roles like motherhood seem natural. For example, women earn less due to the claims of weakness, and female writers are ignored. Feminism challenges this idea that biology defines identity, arguing for personal choice in gender roles. The second one, the second one is postmodernism, gender, and performativity. In the 1990s, feminist thinkers like the famous Judith Butler challenged the idea that gender is fixed. Instead, she argued that gender is a performance, which means people can act as men or women based on social expectation. This performance is shaped by clothing, speech, and behavior, which signal gender identity to others. So, postmodern feminism rejects the idea of a fixed essential man or woman and argues that gender depends on context and repetition. Postmodernists believe gender is shaped by society and always changing, so not fixed or universal. Let's come to materialist views of gender. Materialist feminism provides a critical response to the previous topic, which is postmodern feminism. It focuses on real life social and economic conditions that shape gender roles, rather than just ideas and language like Judith Butler's theory. It connects gender inequality to both patriarchy and capitalism. The key ideas of this materialist feminism is that class impacts gender roles. For example, a rich woman's struggles are different from a poor woman's or unpaid domestic work. Women's household work is essential but often ignored, while men's jobs are valued. The last one is capitalism benefits from inequality, keeping women in unpaid roles while men dominate paid works. This feminist view argues that gender roles are shaped by money, work, and power, not just social expectations. So the next speaker will be Intan Eka Putri.
So the next material is Feminism and the Literary Canon. Feminist cultural theory has significantly challenged the traditional literary canon by highlighting how literature reflects societal inequalities, including gender power dynamics. Feminist criticism examines how patriarchal structures are embedded in male author texts and internalized by women writers. As a net Colony explains, it focuses on how male power is encoded in literature and its impact on women as characters, readers, and writers. The next is Writing Women. Feminists argue that literature helps reinforce unequal power in society by promoting stereotypes of women, such as the virtuous woman, the seductress, and the sacrificing mother. These roles become normal for girls to adopt as they grow up. Since most famous literature has been written by men, they have shaped how women's lives are portrayed. Women's writing has often been ignored or seen as less important. Del Spender and Elaine Walter have studied how women writers have been overlooked. The next is Showalter, in a literature of their own, explain how women in the 19th century were expected to write only about home, fashion, and family. Yet the same male critics who encouraged this dismissed such writing as unimportant. Feminist critics aim to challenge these unfair judgments. Salter also identified three stages of women's writing: the feminine phase, saw women imitating male writing styles and sometimes using male names like George Eliot. The feminist phase, the second one, involved women challenging societal norms and writing about work, class, and independence. The last one is the female phase, 20th century onward, focused on women expressing their own voices, discussing identity, sexuality, and personal freedom. Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar in The Woman in the Attic argued that women's writing often had hidden meanings. The next is woman writing criticism. Ellen Sowarter introduced the term genocriticism in 1979 to describe a way of studying literature that focuses on women as writers and creators of meaning. She argued that literary criticism had traditionally been based on male experiences and perspective, treating them as universal. Genocriticism seeks to highlight the history, themes, styles, and structures of women's writing, emphasizing the unique experiences and creative process of female authors. Gilbert and Guber's work, such as The Woman in the Attic and No Man's Land, expanded on genocriticism by examining how gender and sexuality shape literary history. They explored themes like sexual violence and gender conflicts in modern literature, showing how these issues continue to dominate literary expression. Scholars like Mary Jacobus, Bonnie Zimmerman, and Chandra Talpet Monhanty argued that early feminist critics replaced male-centered views with a female-centered one, but still overlooked differences among women. They pointed out that the experiences of Black women, lesbians, and post-colonial women were often excluded from mainstream feminist literary analysis, just as women had been excluded from male-dominated literature. The next is women, language, and writing. Women, language, and discourse. In the 1970s and early 1980s, linguists studied how men and women use language differently. Robin Lakoff and Del Spender argued that women's language tends to be more polite, indirect, and hesitant, while men's language is more direct, assertive, and commanding. They believed these differences were due to the unequal social positions of men and women. However, Sarah Mills later pointed out that research on gender language has often produce contradictory results, suggesting that the relationship between language and gender is more complex than original thought. The next is uh, écriture feminine. With the rise of post-structuralism, philosophers and critics like Helen Scissors, Julia Kristeva, and Luz Irigaray introduced the idea of women's writing. This type of writing is fluid, nonlinear, and experimental, often blending myth, reality, autobiography, and fiction. Writers like Janet Winterson, A.L. Kennedy, Faye Walden, Kathy Acker, and Angela Carter embraced this style, which challenged traditional storytelling by disrupting language, structure, and form. Maggie Hum later coined the term genographic writing to describe these experimental forms, which use the female body as a source of language and metaphor. This style plays with words, puns, and etymologies linked to women experiences. For example, Irigaray highlights how the word collaboration is linked to labia, while Mary Daly invents the term chronological time to center older women's wisdom. The next material is the body, identity, and the subject. Feminists have identified several ways in which women's bodies are objectified. For example, women are often portrayed as self-sacrificing mothers or loyal wives, reducing them to stereotypes. Beauty contests turn women's body into commodities for male approval, where cosmetic surgery and beauty standards reinforce the idea that women must constantly modify their appearance. The pressure to be thin, promoted in advertisements, films, and fashion, pushes young girls toward extreme weight loss measures. Even nations are symbolized as female bodies, such as the motherland, which men are expected to protect. In all these cases, women have little control over how their own bodies are perceived and treated. Society's expectation of women's bodies and roles are largely shaped by men, leaving women with little say in defining themselves. The next material is the politics of women's biology. Feminist critics have strongly challenged the way biology, especially reproductive biology, has been used to define and limit women. They argue that society reduces women to their ability to give birth as if their main purpose is reproduction. Sigmund Freud's theory of penis envy reinforced this idea by suggesting that women feel incomplete because they lack a penis. This biological explanation for women's psychology helped shape social views that saw women as the second sex, defined by what they supposedly lack. Feminists also critique reproductive technology like in vitro fertilization, IVF, which are often presented as ways to help women become mothers. Sarah Franklin argues that women's bodies have become tools for technological investment, making biology seem controllable. More importantly, reproductive technologies shape gender roles and family structures, reinforcing the belief that families must have children to be complete. The next material is the subject and subjectivity in feminism. Traditional liberal humanism sees subjectivity as based on reason, where individuals have free will and the ability to change their lives, a concept called agency. However, feminists challenge this idea because it excludes emotion and assumes that only rationality defines a person. Since men have historically been seen as rational and women as emotional, this idea automatically sidelines women. Post-structuralist Post-structuralist feminists such as Judith Butler reject fixed ideas of identity, instead viewing subjectivity as fluid and changing. They saw identity as a performance shaped by social expectation rather than something stable. Irigaray argued that Western thought always defines woman as the other of men, meaning that women are only seen in contrast to men rather than as independent beings. Helen Seuss believed in breaking down the male or female binary by returning to a stage of bisexuality, where gender identities are not fixed. However, not all feminists agree with the post-structuralist view that identify is always shifting. So the next material will be presented by Kaylagusti Suwadhani.
Okay, let's continue. So the next material is sexuality and desire. So what is sexuality and desire? Sexuality and desire is contemporary feminism argues that female sexuality has long been marginalized and controlled by the patriarchal system. Women's bodies, desires, and sexuality are often represented through a male perspective, portraying them as insignificant, mysterious, or even monstrous. There's a three things that we can discuss about the sexuality and desire in feminism. The first one is female sexuality in psychoanalysis. So Juliet Mitchell reinterprets Freud theory, stating that psychoanalysis reveals how patriarchy implants gender ideology into the unconscious mind. She highlights that women are often positions as lacking in social transactions, leading to an identity formed through anxiety and absence. Femininity is not inherent but rather a result of repressions and social conditioning imposed since childhood. Mitchell also shows how the odious complex reinforce patriarchies as only men can inherit the father's power, while women must accept femininity as defined by patriarchal culture. Next slide, please. So the second one is resistance to impose feminine identity. So there's a Jack Queller Rose challenge the idea that women passively accept their feminine identities. She argues that the unconscious mind is a space of resistance against imposed identity. Her theory contributes to the disinterested subjects concept in post-structuralism, emphasizing that females' identity is neither fixed nor stable, but rather fragmented and shaped through complex social interactions. Number three is sexuality, representation, and visual culture. Rose also links sexuality with women's representation in media. She argues that feminism must critically analyze how visual culture construct perceptions of female sexuality, particularly in how women are frequently portrayed as fantasies, sexual objects, or objects of male desires. This representation operates within a visual economy where women are primarily seen in ways that serve male interests. Next slide, please. I think you going too far. So national, yeah, yeah. Again, in the back, please. No, no, no. In nationals, please. Again, again. Okay. So I'm so sorry for our mistake. So let's move on to the next material is nationalisms. So what is nationalism? So nationalism is the section nationalism in feminist culture discuss how nationalisms and women's identity are interrelated. Feminists criticize how women are often used as symbols of morality and national identity, but rarely see the active role of women in nations buildings. So there's a two thing four we can discuss about nationalisms. The first one is women as symbols, not political subjects. So in many national movements, women are represented as mother of the nations, culture guardians, or pillars of national morality. Partha Chatterjee critiques how, in colonial nationalism, women were often placed within domestic and cultural spheres, while men were given active role in politics and the economy. Elike Buhemer highlights that in national discourse, women are often used as metaphor for the homeland, something to the protect, preserve, and defended by man. We can see the example like in Indonesia, we figure like R.A. Kartini as our praised national heroes. Heroes. Yet the feminist ideas are advocates are often overlooked in modern politics. The second one is nationals and the control over women's body. Nationalism frequently use women's body as symbols of national honors, leading to strict surveillance over their life, such as dress codes, moral regulations, gender-based violence in conflicts, and restriction on women's freedoms. Next slide, please. And next slide, please, Kak. Okay. The third one is post-colonial feminism and criticism of nationalisms. Post-colonial feminism argues that nationalism often continues colonial system of oppression against women. There is highlight that Western feminism often fails to understand how women in post-colonial nation experience multiple layers of oppression, including colonial history, class struggles, and local patriarchy. We can see the example like in India, although women participate in the independence struggle, they were still expected to return to traditional roles as wives and mothers after independence. The fourth one or the last one is women in politics and national participations. Although women have participated in national movement, they are often excluded from power after independence is achieved. Like we can see Vietnam and Algeria independence movement, like women all fought in war, but were pushed back into domestic role after that. And when in modern politics, still face social barriers, parliamentary quotas, or gender bias in leadership. Next slide, please. Okay, the next material is about race and ethnicity. So race and ethnicity in feminist culture discusses how race and ethnicities influence women's experience, especially in the context of feminism. Feminism is often criticized for being too centered on the experience of white, upper middle class women, neglecting women of different races and ethnicities, especially those from developing countries or marginalized communities. There are two that we can discuss about race ethnicity in feminism. So, next slide, please. Wait. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the Black feminisms first. So Black feminism is a branch of feminism that emerged in response to the failure of mainstream feminisms, aka dominated by white women, to address the issues faced by Black women. Black feminisms highlight how race, gender, and class intersect to create unique forms of oppression for Black women. Black feminisms focus on the intersection of race, gender, and class and how Black women experience uniform discrimination. This movement criticized mainstream feminism for being too centered on white women, emphasizing that women's experience cannot be separate from the social and historical context. Through the concept of intersectionality, Black feminisms demonstrate that gender equality cannot be achieved without addressing racism and economic injustice. There is an issue about Black feminism is like intersectionality overlapping from of Operation Black Woman, expressing not only sexism but also systematic racism and economic discrimination. The second one is post-colonial feminism. So, post-feminism is a branch of feminism that critiques mainstream, aka Western feminisms, for focus too much on the experience of white women from developed countries while neglecting women from firmly colonized nations. This feminism emphasizes that women's experiences are shaped by colonial history, race, class, and culture. So, feminism must be more inclusive and acknowledge the diversity of women's experience. Women for developing nations are not just victims, but also agents of a change with their own strategy for fight for their rights. One key critique of Western feminism is assumption that all women experience oppression in the same way without considering the effects of colonialism and economic disparities. Chandra Topaldi Mohanty highlight how women from developing countries are often depicted as passive victims in Western feminism discourse. With colonialisms, as colonial rules often use gender difference to maintain power. For example, like British colonization in India frames Indian women as oppressed to justify their interference in local traditions. Next. Okay, so will be the last material. It will talk about technology and the feminism's response. So, what is that? So, the technology and the feminism response section in feminism culture discuss how technology impacts women's life and how feminism responds to the change brought by technological advancements. Technology can be a tool for women empowerment, but it can also reinforce patriarchal system if not critically examined. The relationship between technology and gender, the history of technology has been dominated by men, both in innovation and decisions making regarding its use. Women have often been excluded from technological development and are considered as secondary players in it's discussed how technology impacts women's life and how feminism responds to the change brought the technological advancements. Technology can be a tool for a woman empowerment, but it can also reinforce patriarchal system if not critically examined. The relationship between the technology and gender, the history of technology has been dominated by men, but in innovation and decisions making regarding its use. Women have often been excluded from technological developments and are considered secondary players in science, engineering, and the digital industry. Feminism highlights how technology can be means of liberating women from traditional constraints, but also a mechanism for greater control over women's bodies and life. Also, there is a talk about the cyber culture. So what is cyber culture? Culture is a concept in feminism and posthumanist theory that explores how technology blurs the boundaries between humans and machines, natures and cultures, and men and women. The concept is heavily influenced by Donna Haraway in her famous essay, A Cyber Manifesto in 1985, which challenges traditional notions of identity, body, and gender. Cyber cultures change the way we understand identity, gender, and the body in the age of the technology. And also, not only human-machine hybrids, but also fluid symbols of identity rejecting biological and social boundaries defined by patriarchy. Feminism must continue to criticize how technology is developed and how it can be used to create a more equality society without reinforcing existing gender injustice. And there's a two discuss about feminism's technology and feminism's response. The first one is woman in or and cyberspace. There is opportunity provided by cyberspace for women access to a knowledge like the internet allows women to access information that was previously difficult to obtain, such as online education, reproductive health, and legal rights. The second one is economy opportunities, like the digital world enables women to work from home, run online businesses, and participate in the digital economy. The last one is networking and solidarity. Feminism activism has flourished online with movements like Me Too, Time's Up, and other feminist campaigns. The second one is threats to women in cyberspace. So there's a three things about threats in the cyberspace. The first one is cyber harassment, like women active in the digital space after face online harassment such as like trolling, threats of violence, and misogynist attack. The second one is revenge porn and doxing, like the unauthorized spread of private images is frequently used to shame and control women. And the last one is algorithm bias. Artificial intelligence and algorithms often reinforce gender inequality, such as in recruitment systems that favor male candidates. And there's the cyberfeminism art and culture. So what is that? Like cyberfeminism and art and culture use digital technology to challenge particle representation in media, art, and popular culture. Like concept of cyberfeminism art, like rejecting gender binaries, like cyberfeminism critique the idea that gender must always be binary or like male or female, and use digital art to explore more fluid identity. The second one is using to challenge the patriarchy. Like many feminist artists use digital media to create how I mean work that challenge gender norms and critique practical system. And the last one is critique more diverse female identities. Cyberfeminism seeks to represent women in various forms rather than just a sexual object in popular culture. I think next slide, please.
Okay,
Okay,
so the last topic presented marks the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Um, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.